What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Focus Forward podcast. I am your host, Tim Bowie. I hope you're ready for a great show. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Listen, man, thank you for coming by, hanging out with your boy for a few minutes. This is the very first episode of the Focus Forward podcast, man. Again, I just thank you for coming by. You could have been anywhere at this moment doing anything with your time, but you decided to stop by and watch or listen. And I just want to say thank you. But do me this favor. Let's let everybody know that there is a new podcast in town called the Focus Forward Podcast, and we will be talking about life, leadership, and everything else in between. So help me build this community and let's empower each other to be better. All right, let's go ahead and get into today's topic, and it is adaptable leadership. Adaptable leadership. I believe that if I would poll a group of people, everyone has had some kind of interaction with leadership, either as the leader, the person who is leading a team, or as a team member who is following a leader or a group of leaders. And I believe since we've lived life a little bit, everybody has had some good and bad experiences with leadership, maybe from the leadership perspective or from the team perspective. But everybody has had a wide range of interaction and experience with leadership. But I think one thing that we cannot deny is that here in 2024, we can attest to the fact that leadership has changed over the last 15 to 20 years. Things are just different, man. The landscape of how people lead, how we lead, how teams engage leadership, how leadership involves teams, it's just flat out changed, man. There's no way around that. Time and progression are inevitable. And so as things happen, evolution is going to be one of those things that just kind of happens. And so it kind of forces us to be ready to do more and to be better. Otherwise, we get left behind, right? And I think that's what's happened over the last couple of decades, is that things have just evolved. Teams need more, people need more, and people expect more. And I think they are well within their right to expect whatever they want to expect, whatever they need to expect from a leader who they're going to follow in any capacity, right? I can tell you that my leadership journey started back in 2005 or 6. I worked at an apartment complex starting back in 2003. And from there, I was blessed to get an opportunity to be a maintenance supervisor. So I was 25, 26 years old. I thought I knew a lot about life. And here I am thrust into this position where I'm having to lead largely guys who are older than me, which is a whole different dynamic in itself. We'll talk about that later. But I'm having to lead guys that are older than me. And I'm having to do this I was doing this from a very rigid perspective because of how I was raised, right? I was raised in the 80s in a very strict household, and there wasn't very, very much gray area. Everything was pretty much black and white. So when I started my leadership journey, I didn't have an idea. I had no clue about this thing called soft skills, compassion, care, attentiveness. I had no idea about inclusion and what that meant, right? Just because of how I was raised. I've come to find out that since leaders are people, that leaders tend to lead how they were led. So however you were led in a team construct, it's likely it's largely how you will likely lead in your infancy of your leadership journey. And so that was me. That was me, man. I led how I was led and how I was taught to lead. But I learned very quickly that it was not beneficial for me to lead like that. I had limited engagement with the team, and I was okay with that because, again, I did not need a lot. I was one of those guys where if you paid me on Friday like you were supposed to pay me, then everything else is fine. We're good to go. You have no quarrels from me. The donuts on Fridays were good. The pizza parties were fine. The extra tips and everything were great. But as personally, I didn't need that because of how I was raised. But I had to learn that everybody doesn't come from the same background, right? But again, I learned that people just tend to lead how they were led. And I also learned that people tend to lean on what they know because they have experience, right? So I have experience doing things in a certain way, and I know my way works because I have the proof that my methods, when applied correctly, get me the outcome that I desire. And so when I applied that train of thought, I left no room for input from my team, right? And this kind of put a distance between me and my team. And this happens with leaders all the time, when the leaders don't consult or involve the teams with decisions or with processes and everything, things like that. And so I think it's very wise for leaders to at least consider giving their teams a voice and let the team's voice be heard, because you never know, man. You may hear something that may spark a new thought. You may hear something that may help you be more efficient as a leader and may change your overall process, and still get you the goal that you attain, but in a more efficient way. But leaders tend to lean on what they know because they have an experience that what they do actually works, right? And I think that that is somewhat of a crutch for leaders who refuse to change. Leaders who are strict in their approach, because they have that experience, they're very closed-minded. They tend to not work well with others, so to say, right? But over the last 20 years, there's been this almost exchange in the workforce. I think I'll kind of talk about that for a minute. But the workforce has gotten younger, right? There's been somewhat of a generational transition, a generational exchange of the workforce and the candidate pool now, right? The talent pool. So there's a different feel. There's a different level of expectation. There's a different level of need from the candidate pool, from those who we are trying to hire. And because they are from the different generation, what they require is kind of what we have to give them, right? It's this idea that perception is reality. That if you believe something and you perceive it to be a certain way, to you, that's real. So if somebody says, "Hey, man, I need to be in a place that makes me feel good, that I feel like I'm a part of the team," to them, that's real. They need to be a part of a company or a structure that gives them that kind of inclusivity that makes them feel a part of the team. It's real to them, right? But as the talent pool and the candidate pool has gotten younger, leaders are starting to get older, and there is another wave of leadership that's starting to take place, and that kind of transitioned into those leadership roles. And so we saw a lot of people emerging in different fields all over the map as far as the fields go. But there's a new level of leadership that's happening, and they're leading with a different mindset. We're leading with a different idea, where the leader is not necessarily first, but the leader is first in putting the team first, right? And so the leaders who are most effective, I believe, in this day and age, are leaders who will be inclusive, leaders who will be engaged with their teams, and who will actually show the soft skills, who will employ the soft skills, who will show compassion, who will show kindness, who will show love and care and tenderness and all those good things, right? Because again, to this generation of candidate pool, those things matter, and they want those things. Those things matter to them, and so they have a right to expect whatever it is they want to expect from their leader. Now, whether the leader can give it to them or not, that's a different topic. But the people have a right to expect whatever it is they want to expect. And I think that it's just a different day and age, a different iteration of the candidate pool and the workforce that we're having to deal with now. And so, yeah, we're having to change a lot of how we lead and what we lead. But again, engagement is paramount, guys. And engagement is paramount. If you're going to be a leader and you don't like people, you will not last very long. The days of the introverted leader, they are coming to an end, right? If you are introverted and you have to force yourself to be outside of the box, or to communicate, or to be around people, you'll likely tire out from having to fake that, right? Because if that's who you are, then that's just who you are. And you have to find your level of leadership, and you have to find your team, right? I believe there's one thing, that everybody who has a voice has an audience, right? And so if you are a leader and you lead with from more of an introverted perspective, where you don't need a lot of engagement, you like limited communication, then there's somebody for you. You just have to find that particular group of people that you can lead and engage with, that understand you, right? So there's, again, everybody who has a voice has an audience who will listen to them, right? But leadership has changed, guys. It's different. It is it can be tiring, but it's also rewarding because I believe again as we seek to remain adaptable, as we seek to remain open to change, open to that what we know is not all that there is to know, then we end up opening the doors for new opportunities. I believe that a strong leader or a progressive leader is a leader who is always willing to learn. We're always learning. I try to learn something new every day. You know what I mean? Again, I know that what I know is not all that there is to be known, right? But progressive leaders tend to be connected and involved in the lives of other progressive leaders and their teams, right? Teams, people who work on teams, who work in groups. When you're hiring on, or you're looking for a team to work with or a company, that's a very important thing. Now they want to know the vision of the leader. They want to know the vision of the company. How do I fit, and how does the leader support the team? Right. In my current role right now, what I do in my secular job, supporting the team, our maintenance guys, is paramount to me because I've been in their shoes. So being that voice, being that resource, even if somebody needs to call me to vent, right? I try to be that because again, I know what it's like to need that kind of support or need that kind of an outlet and not be provided with it, right? And so I think those of us who have had those leadership moments, who've had those leadership encounters that have not necessarily worked out favorably for us, we now have an opportunity to be that for somebody else. And I think that's the way that we get the opportunity to pay it forward to the next generation, is that a lot of us who've come up this hard way, who have come up the way that we've been, again, very, very rigid in the infancy of our leadership journey. We've been very rigid in our thought process, but we've over the years learned to engage, learned to employ new principles, learned to be inclusive. We've learned to listen. We've learned to allow our teams to have voices and allow them to have input, and sometimes take their advice, right? Because I think part of leadership, taking advice, it's a form of relinquishing control, and that can be scary, especially when you're used to being in control of everything. But I think everybody ends up in a positive manner with this, because again, it forces the leader to grow. It forces the leader to grow. And if you're going to do anything, if you're going to achieve any kind of goal, you are not going to do it by yourself. I read a book a little bit back a few months ago by Bishop T.D. Jakes entitled Disruptive Thinking. And he made this statement. He said, if you have a goal that can be attained by yourself, then your goal is too small. In other words, if you have a goal that you can reach by yourself without people, that goal is not big enough. So the proper goal that you have, the right goal that you need to be chasing, is a goal that involves you working with other people. And as leaders, we have to recognize other gifts and talents, recognize other functions, and build teams. Get this now, build teams that actually help our weaknesses and not just allow us to focus on our strengths, right? If I'm strong in one area, I don't need to hire somebody else who's strong in that same area. I need to hire somebody who can help my weakness, right? I can hire somebody who can help my weakness, who can help plug that hole for me, right? I think that can be scary sometimes too, because again, when we are leaders and we've been a certain way and we've led a certain way, we've been taught a certain way, getting out of our own way sometimes can be very difficult because again, it's a way of somewhat relinquishing control, and it's a way of allowing somebody else to do something that we've always done, and it's scary, right? It's scary to do that, especially for those who have to lead major organizations. Change is inevitable, but change can also be scary. It can be different. Everybody, again, is forced to lead in a different way, and we're forced to employ things that we may not have had to consider in yesteryear, but we're here, so we're either going to have to adapt or we'll get left behind, right? I think the market has proven that those who will be successful in this iteration of leadership and achievement are going to be those who embrace this idea of working together, the idea of team building, the idea of providing a path for growth and progression and promotion within the team, and allowing that to be one of the things that we really lean on to help build our teams. And so we can ultimately build people, because I believe that strong leaders and good leaders don't make followers, but good leaders make more leaders, right? Good leaders make more leaders. My goal for everybody who I have an opportunity to lead is for them not to stay where they are, but I would love to be in a position where I can help them make the next step in their journey, whether that be secular or in life. I would love to help them get to that next step in their journey, right? And that's what leaders do. That's what leaders do. And we do this, again, by employing all of the things that we know and all of the things that we've learned on the way, right? But again, leadership, man, it can be different. It can be difficult, but we must remain adaptable. We've got to be flexible enough to make the change when the change needs to be made, even if we don't have all the answers. That's adaptable leadership. It is being flexible enough, or being willing to be flexible enough to make the change that we know needs to be made, even when we don't have the answers. And when somebody else has to answer, we have to say it's actually okay, right? One of the greatest things that leaders can say is, I don't know. I don't know. I know the pressure to have all the answers. I understand the pressure to want to have all the answers, but the fact is we're human. We're not going to know everything. We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so that's a part of being adaptable, because again, every day things change. Evolution and change is inevitable, right? As long as the sun keeps coming up and the moon keeps coming up, the earth keeps revolving, change is inevitable. It's inevitable, right? And so since change is going to happen anyway, our focus as leaders should be on how we can help facilitate that change in a way that helps to build our team and promote our team and encourage them to be a better version of themselves, and hopefully ultimately get them into leadership roles, right? That's remaining adaptable. Being open to embrace change, being willing to explore ways to make the processes more efficient, right? Encourage your teams to have a voice. Encourage them to have an opinion, right? You'd be surprised what you would learn if we just open up and listen to our teams. Open up and listen to people. Have conversations with them outside of the workplace. Go have a cup of coffee before you go to work, or go to lunch with the colleague you hadn't talked to before. Go do that. Do those things, because again, you allow yourself the ability to be vulnerable, and nobody likes to be vulnerable, right? Because it's a scary place. It's a place where you are somewhat naked, and anything can happen, and you're bearing your feelings, and you're putting yourself out there, and you don't know exactly what you're going to get in return. But still, if you're going to lead, that's something that you have to do as a leader. You have to be willing to be vulnerable, right? We've got to become very comfortable with the idea, again, that we don't have all the answers, right? But that's all a part of being adaptable, all right? It's all a part of being adaptable. Well, guys, that's it for today, man. Listen, thank y'all for tuning in. I do appreciate you here on the very first episode. I hope you got something out of this, man, dealing with adaptable leadership. I hope my story has helped somebody. Do me a favor. You can follow us on all social media at The Focus Forward Podcast 24, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Or you can follow us right here again next time when we have our next episode, all right? Listen, we're glad to have you, man. So glad for you to be here. Share this with a friend. Until next time, y'all keep pushing. Focus forward. Thank you for tuning in to the Focus Forward podcast. I hope something was said today to help you continue to push towards your future. I appreciate your presence and your engagement. So do me a huge favor. Follow us on all of our social media platforms at The Focus Forward Podcast 24. That's on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Also, help me get the word out about the Focus Forward podcast. Share this with a friend and let them know that there's a new podcast in town that's all about helping you reach your full potential. Until the next time we meet in the virtual space, y'all keep pushing. Focus forward.